Mungkin bisa dimulai, Pak Rainer, silakan.
Okay, I think we can start. It's 7 p.m. Or do you want to wait a few more minutes, Pak Rahmat?
Ya, silakan. Kita selalu on time. Kita nggak peduli datang apa enggak. Kita selalu on time.
Okay. Okay, I think we can start. Next page. Okay, thanks everyone for coming to this webinar. First of all, I would like to speak about the webinar rule. As per usual, please write your name as you registered, and participant will be muted. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, and this webinar will post questions during the sessions for the Q&A later. If you'd like to ask any questions, please write them in the chat at any moment or raise hand to be unmuted, and we will address it subsequently at the end during the Q&A. Today, our speaker will be Matt, our Pintar CPO. He's been a professional in working in finance for the past 20 years. He's graduated from Harvard University, and he's previously the CFO of NetTV. And his previous work includes working at Gunung Sewu, Citicorp, and McKinsey. And he'll be the speaker today, speaking about Pintar and the market about the education tech industry. Yeah, Matt, please go ahead.
Okay, let's take care of that. Okay. I think that's for you right now. So it's 1 PL credit.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry. So this program will be part of the CFA continuous learning. So everybody can record 1 PL credit by joining this event.
Thank you everyone for taking time tonight. In Jakarta, as I look outside our office window, I see the traffic is getting back to normal. Things are more challenging, so thanks for taking the time. You've got the admins, right? Okay, great. So we're going to talk about 3 things tonight. We're going to talk about the imperative for upskilling, some trends in EdTech, and we'll also be talking about the EdTech market, and we'll also be sharing a little bit about our company, Pinter. Next. So when we think about upskilling and stuff, like related to that, a lot of times, given what we've gone through for the last 2 years with COVID and the pandemic, we think about what's been happening, the adjustments we've been making, the disruptions and things like that. But we'd actually like to provide a bit of a bigger picture in terms of some of the forces at work that are driving the need for upskilling. So let's start actually going back in time a bit. This is actually from a study back in 2017, looking at the impact of automation and what kind of disruption it would have on the workforce across the world. And the findings were quite dramatic and impactful, finding that by 2030, 6 out of 10 occupations they looked at, in these occupations, more than 30% of the activities could be automated. So it means the person who is doing that job now, with automation, they'd have at least 30% of their time free. And the question is, what do you do with that? If you look at the number of workers that would be losing their jobs due to automation or having to switch, almost 400 million. And if you look at more closely at Indonesia, 12% of the work activities would be displaced by automation by 2030. And if you look at the chart on the left, you can see Indonesia there with about 12%. And the size of the circle is giving an indication of the absolute number of workers that could be displaced. And you can see Indonesia is actually one of the bigger circles, following China, India, and the US. If you look way up there, you see Japan, actually quite interesting, is quite big as well too. And if you're wondering, what are some of the things when we talk about automation, what are we actually talking about? One is the use of AI. Second is neural networks. Third is robotics. And fourth is automation products, and a couple of examples of those. One would be self-driving cars. We don't quite have self-driving go-car or Gojek now, but who knows in the future. Another is things like voice AI and chatbots. And I mentioned this one because even in our business in EdTech, we are actually exploring this technology to see can it be applicable and relevant and helpful in terms of our work. So we are actually looking at some voice AI vendors to see if it can be something that we would like to use in our own work and business. Next. So another driver in terms of this disruption and the need for upskilling, and maybe it's not getting that much focus now here, and maybe more some other markets, but it's the focus on sustainability and what that will have in terms of how industries operate. In certain industries, how they, their feasibility of continuing to operate, so on and so forth. So let's pick a few relevant examples here for Indonesia. One is automotive, and we know the government is very supportive of the push towards electric vehicles, EVs. And maybe it's something that's not happening now at scale, but who knows 5 years or 10 years down the road. And if you look at automotive, there are well over 1 million workers in this industry. So there could be a huge impact in terms of what these workers need to understand, and even how many of them are needed in this industry. A similar thing in terms of coal mining, because of the impact of the environment, 400,000 people are working directly in this industry, and a bunch more are working in related and support industries. So the impact there can be huge. And I know for a fact from personal experience that some groups that are actually active in this sector, one are trying to think about how they actually take what they're earning from coal mining to invest in new businesses, because they feel like they will need new areas of growth. And others, trying to figure out how do they manage the increasing expectation and demands from shareholders and stakeholders for environmental compliance and sustainability. And the last one here, agriculture. Maybe this was something that's going to happen in other markets first, because there are larger stakeholders there, and maybe in Indonesia, smaller stakeholders will take a bit more time in terms of how agriculture feels the impact of climate change. But again, it's something that can be quite disruptive in terms of the opportunities that are out there and the need for people to upskill and reskill. Next. So the first slide was from 2017. Now jumping ahead to this is 2019. This is actually a global survey on future workforce needs. And so we talked about automation, and these are automation, other technology and business models are evolving. So when they went out and talked to people there, they found that almost 90% of them felt that these companies felt that we're going to have big skill gaps in the next 5 years. But it's quite interesting in that in 2019, and this is pre-pandemic, they're saying, okay, hiring and contracting are the best way, or not the best ways, the most common ways to fill the gaps. Upskilling, they said, actually is the more effective, but it wasn't the #1 choice in terms of how they ranked what they wanted to do to fill the gaps. And if you saw the detailed data, you'd find upskilling is actually even less popular in Asia Pacific compared to other geographies. So even if you see Asia Pacific, if we need to fill a gap, let's go out and hire somebody. Or if we don't want to hire someone on a permanent basis, let's do it on a contract basis. But let's get somebody from outside the organization, because these skill gaps are intensifying, and we really need to find a way to fill these gaps and to fill it quickly. Next. Now, if we go ahead, this next survey looking at reskilling was done during the pandemic. So this is about 1.5 years later, at the end of 2020. We all know about the various disruptions and adjustments that we had to make. And the outlook, the viewpoint in terms of how you actually close skill gaps had changed dramatically. And you can see here, almost 70% of the companies surveyed said that, okay, we're going to do more of upskilling. 46% said we're going to do more redeployment. 42% said more hiring, but 25% said less hiring. So there's definitely clearly a shift in terms of It's closing the skill shortage by leveraging the talent that was already inside. And sometimes, again, it's through upskilling, also by redeployment to new roles and things like that. As you would expect, given a lot of the adjustments that took place, one of the areas that was a major focus for upscaling was on basic digital skills. Now, we all know how that's become a higher priority for all of us in very different ways. Interesting though, some of the top focus areas for the upskilling were on soft skills. So leadership, critical thinking, decision-making. So when we're dealing with this disruption and we're dealing with a lot of unknowns, the idea of upskilling in terms of these soft skills actually was rated by the company's leaders as the top priorities, because we're operating in a changing world and we need people to be able to lead us through these changes, find ways to continue to operate, find ways to adjust, etc. And so it's interesting that the big shift within a year plus from let's go outside the organization to fill the gap to let's focus on who we have inside and let's build both on their soft skill side as well as some of the hard skills like digital skills. So now we'll take some time to look about the role of technology in workforce development. And this is where, as you'll see, Edtech, where we focus, comes more directly into play. Next. So on this next survey, they're saying, okay, how do you actually fill and close the gaps? What kind of things do you do in terms of what's the best way to learn to fill the gaps? Not too surprisingly, digital learning was seen as having a very strong link to successful skill transformation. And people and companies, across the world found that this really had some power and was really quite effective. And they also said, no, if you can actually combine the digital learning with other types of learning, sometimes peer learning, expert coaching, sometimes combining digital learning, in-person or virtual workshops, it was even more effective. And this actually makes me think about a couple of recent training partnerships that we've concluded. I think there's actually one that was announced today on LinkedIn. So two of the recent training partners we have are ET School and Pullman Astra. And both of these, I mentioned them because they have very practical hands-on learning in terms of the curriculum that they're trying to focus on, in terms of the technical skills that they're trying to teach. And they're very used to operating in an offline world for very understandable reasons. So when we first spoke with them, we really had to brainstorm together to think about how we can even make things more effective in a hybrid world. For example, in terms of saving time and costs, you may be teaching the theory through online learning, and that may be complemented by going on site for practical training. And through a series of discussions with both of these now partners, we agreed that let's work together to collaborate to bring the best of what we can through Edtech, through the digital, combined with some of the more traditional learning methods that they deployed, because we wanted to figure out the most efficient and effective way, and to do so by leveraging Edtech. So things are shifting, even where there have been more traditional, even shifting in terms of how we build up skills and how we interface with learners and help them to develop themselves. So we'll spend a few more minutes talking about a number of trends, and we'll try to talk about it by illustrating examples and looking at some of the trends here that are actually connecting to workforce development. And to just let you know, just skipping ahead for a minute, why are we talking about workforce development so much? Because for us here at Pinter, actually that's our focus within Edtech in terms of workforce development and upskilling. And when we talk about workforce, we talk about, we're not talking about a specific age, we're talking about a lifetime learning opportunity. And these are some of the trends and the technologies that are helping to enable that. So in terms of virtual reality and augmented reality, gamification, we'll talk about some elements in terms of what users are looking for in terms of flexibility, how data is being leveraged, and I'll share an interesting example for that, and then online mobile learning as well. Okay, let's continue. Next.
Please
Okay.
continue.
Yep, sorry about that. So the first example, virtual reality in medical training. And we have a few photos here. On the top left of a nursing student wearing a VR headset. On the right is a cardiac exam on a virtual patient. On the bottom left, group learning. So using a multi-screen VR experience, so not only the person who's actually engaging in VR can learn, but other people can observe and see what's going on and learn from that. And a virtual patient. So here there's actually both a virtual patient and they're using a virtual light, and they're actually using the VR here to give the medical professional a way to leverage VR to try and get as rich a learning experience that is simulating in a very clear and real way in terms of how they would interact with the patients. Okay, next. Another here is, we always know when you think about airports and things like that, we often think about, if you want to talk about virtual reality, we all know about probably flight simulators and things like that that have been around for a long time, focusing on the pilots. But now actually VR is going beyond the pilots to the airport staff in terms of providing them reality training. We have a short video here. I know videos can always be a bit risky, but we'll give it a shot, and let's see if we can play the video for about a minute or so. So again, this is about an airport rescue and firefighting training. And again, of course, we've seen or may know of the simulators for the pilots. But this is actually saying, okay, for the people here at the rescue team, how do you actually practice? How do you do that? Of course, you can do physical simulations. It's not that easy to do because in terms of clearing the runways, making the space, getting the equipment ready, dedicating that to physical simulations when you may need it already on standby. So how do you also try to give them other opportunities to feel the situation, experience the situation, have to make the decisions, so on and so forth, and then have consequences in terms of whether they're making the right decisions and getting them to think in real time and to act in real time. And so this is an example here with PT Angkasa Pura II in terms of for the airport personnel, again, for the airport rescue and firefighting training. Okay. Okay, we'll get to the next one. We have a few examples here of gamification. And I think gamification here, this is Minecraft. I think some of us would know this probably from our kids. I'm not sure if there are any Minecraft players amongst attendees here, but if not, you may know it from your kids. And there's actually a section of portion of Minecraft called on the education edition and focus more on education. And this is actually Minecraft being used in schools. And you see here, they actually have many different simulations and gamification. The ones here are focused on climate-related issues and getting the players to look at being involved and immersed in terms of challenges here in deforestation, the impact of transport on climate change, and also agriculture, which is also something I mentioned earlier on climate change. In these cases, from the role of an investigative journalist. But the idea here is to really take these tools and to really promote collaboration, really to promote creativity, and to really promote problem solving in an immersive digital environment. And this is one example. Maybe we'll go to the next slide. And so, now go back one, please. So this is actually something that Siemens rolled out, Siemens Plantville. And this is supposed to be simulating a plant manager's experience. And so Siemens is using gamification to really understand how the operation and organization works, getting the people to solve real life situations, really getting them to address multiple challenges, including productivity, including sustainability and overall plant health. There are social learning features here, so you get to know one's decisions, how do they impact various stakeholders, and there's assessment tools here. So yes, fun and games, but actually with really serious learning objectives and importance actually for performance in the workplace. And then finally on the gamification, there's just more simple tactics in terms of, sometimes it's a leaderboard or a status, making a fun status board, or using questions into games to really try and find ways to engage learners and really trying to get them to focus and ways in terms of engaging in upskilling. Okay. Next. So there was another thing here in terms of asynchronous learning, student autonomy, and online community. So this is actually an example from our work with one of our university partners. So we have approximately 10 university partners where we collaborate with them on blended learning. So we worked with them to develop and deliver the online portion of the blended learning for these SOC 2 programs. And then typically in a non-pandemic time, they would also have offline learning, although obviously recently it's been all online. But the idea here is that even with an online learning, and here students are primarily engaged in self-paced learning, there's a feeling of a need for a community. So at the beginning of each semester we hold, and for now it's been an online event with all the students in the program, and it's providing them that online forum, but about community. So in terms of providing them briefing and support from the university officials. We also have some briefing and support from ourselves in terms as a blended learning partner. And then we have a number of student representatives and speakers who share their experience and things like that. So online community, even in an online world, the online community can be very important for people. To create that sort of shared identity and shared experience. And this is something that we recognize. We talked about hybrid in different ways. So this is a way of making the overall online and EdTech experience even richer by incorporating this online community. Yes. Learning data example. So this is, we've actually recently had discussions with a company called Edtech. And they use emotion AI. And what this is, and it's not something we've implemented, but we think it's really interesting, is they actually have cameras on the instructor and on the students, and they're measuring the facial tracking, the eye gaze tracking, and the voice tonality as well. And what they're able to do with the accuracy of 95% plus is to really understand the level of engagement. And from the student perspective, the level of effectiveness from the teacher perspective, and also the level of effectiveness from a content perspective. We think it's actually really interesting. We think, frankly, it's probably challenging to implement because when people want to do their studying, maybe not everybody will want to have a camera on them observing them. But the idea here that you can leverage this kind of AI to really learn more about the user experience and to take that learning and feedback that in terms of better teaching, in terms of more effective content, and in terms of an overall more effective and enjoyable user experience. Okay, next. And together, another online learning example from online learning. So Indonesia, which is actually one of our enterprise corporate clients. So when you're an organization like Indonesia, which we all know, very large in terms of number of employees, very large in terms of locations and things like that. You have people moving among locations. There's high mobility. Turnover is not low in an organization like this. So how do you find ways to be more effective and efficient in terms of delivering training? One of the ways is actually to leverage Edtech to do it remotely, to do it for things like when you have onboarding, when you have people across the archipelago starting. You don't want to call people in from across Java and across the entire country to a single location, but to do it remotely. Also, when you have a new product or promotion, again, how do you get that information out there? How do you train people in an effective way? If you have someone taking on a new role at a location, how do you get them to do that? Or you have people moving locations, and how do you prepare them for operating in that? So we have been working with Indonesia on a bunch of these things in terms of delivering the training remotely. And it's found to be both from them, both effective and efficient. And we're actually looking to even further intensify this collaboration because thankfully it's been working well for them. And this is an example of for a highly distributed business, the power and the effectiveness of Edtech. Okay. So let's jump over to the market landscape. Here are just a couple of things to point out. On the left side, you can actually see what happened during the pandemic. Globally, actually, it dropped down in terms of education expenditure. There are a lot of things, major disruption, but that is rebounding. But on the right side, if you look at global EdTech, before the COVID, it was already expected to grow quite well at 11% per year. And now after COVID, in terms of having that impact, it's over 16% per year because people are seeing how much EdTech really can be helpful in a variety of different ways and address different problems. And this has also been reflected in the capital markets. And so here you see in 2021, there was a jump up in terms of the amount of capital that was raised globally for EdTech and the number of new EdTech unicorns, and we'll talk a bit more about that. And on the right side, you see a number of the players that did the biggest raise. And to me, it was interesting, if you look on the far right on the series side, we have anywhere from Series A to Series H. And Series A, and to be honest, when I saw Series A 1.5 billion, I had to double check, and I did, because this is actually a company that's been around since 2002. But when it decided to really go to market, it was able to have a huge impact. And this is a company that works with different corporates in terms of helping them, enable them to create training opportunities and training content. And then Una Academy, Series 8, so that's very far along, but they are able to, with this uptick in terms of the interest in EdTech and the belief in EdTech, we're able to raise a very significant amount of money. So really, from a global perspective, really jumped up. Next. And then also from the capital markets, there were 5 companies that IPO'd and 17 that went unicorn. But let's also because I think here in Indonesia, we also have to see the full picture. So one question you might have and I had, what happened to these companies after they went IPO? And perhaps that's a bit motivated by some of the more recent high-profile IPOs here and what happened to them after IPO, including Bukalapak and GoTo. Actually, the IPO story here is not as wonderful post IPO as you know they probably would like. So from Duolingo, Udemy, and Coursera, since their IPOs, actually their market value has dropped between 49% to 66%. So there's been a significant correction. And just by way of reference, I looked at GoTo and Bukalapak, and those are minus 37 and minus 69%. So there's probably not a question about the opportunity, not so much, but maybe a question about the pricing and the valuation. If you look at the two from China, though, it's I'm not sure if you're familiar, but actually in China in 2021, there was a significant change in the regulations in terms of what was allowed in EdTech. And the two there, Chinese, I will not try to say the Juju Blast one, because I'm sure I'll say that wrong, but that and the Zhangmen, they went decreased over 90%, 96 and 99%. Because of regulatory intervention. So there are a lot of edtechs being made into unicorns, and there's still a lot of support there. But there's also, when the companies get to the growth stage, and we've had from our talks with investors in this sector, from the early stage investments, and we'll see that on the next slide, tremendous appetite there. But when you get more to the growth stage, that some of the investors are taking a harder look for reasons here. And you know, talking to a group of people from CFAs, you would obviously understand in terms of the hard facts and what investors may be focusing on. Okay, next. So looking closer at Indonesia, so a couple of things here. We see there's actually some consolidation. So Xenius, which had been an online play, acquired Primagana, a major tutoring company. And again, this is looking at the power and effectiveness of the hybrid play. And within the last 6 months, the three middle players on there, Kohler, Xenius, and Chakap, have all raised funds. So the total raise today, a significant amount of that actually has come in the last 6 months. So there's still tremendous interest and belief in terms of the Indonesia EdTech opportunity. These are generally speaking, not 100%, but generally speaking, including Ruang Guru, focus more on the K-12 education segment. Binar Academy and ourselves are focused a bit much more on workforce, because we do see the huge opportunity there. I think from the interest in Indonesia EdTech and appetite, it's still there. But as I mentioned, as companies get more mature and get into the growth phase and into the public market sector, that they are being looked at very carefully in terms of not only the growth, but really in terms of the financial bottom line performance, in terms of really generating that profitability. Okay, next. So I'll just take a few minutes to talk about us, and then we'll open up for discussion and perhaps any Q&A. So for us at Pinter, as I said, we are focused more on workforce learning and development. And we are operating in 3 sectors, corporate or enterprise, so obviously working with companies for their internal needs, and also helping them to meet their CSR obligations in terms of upskilling their supporting and surrounding communities. Also with BOM, so state-owned enterprises, and even with some government ministries as well. In addition, the skills, so these are shorter term training courses. One area where you may know us from, for some people, would be the government graduate program. And we are one of the digital platform partners for that, helping to serve those people there. And we're also looking in terms of short-term skills courses and upskilling more for the general public as well. Third are the degrees, and I've talked about some of our university partners and these blended online programs. And just to add to that, one thing I didn't mention is that for these degree programs, often we're focused on people who are working. So over 80% of our students are actually working while studying. And what we've been able to help them do is to make this opportunity, the access to the higher education and the SAT2 programs, accessible and feasible through the blended online learning programs and degrees that we're helping to offer and deliver, because they have the flexibility to study when they have, according to their schedule, according to their availability, and being able to manage things for them. I said over 80% of them are working, so that's already quite challenging. Even some of them have families, so that's an additional challenge. So they need that flexibility and be able to, the autonomy, self-autonomy in terms of managing their own learning experience in the way that will make it work with their other obligations and commitments. As you can see here, over the years, we've accumulated over close to 2 million users of our platform across the various verticals. Next. Now, in terms of education, we actually think that while there's a lot of great stuff in terms of what's been around for a long time, we also have to take a real look at how well the universities are linking the educational experience with what's needed in the market. Here you would see nobody's perfect. You see, I think US is at the top of this list, but still far from perfect, and Indonesia a bit further down. So there's a question of how well are the universities' education, how well is it a match for different people, and how well is it preparing them for the different opportunities and what the workforce needs are. And as we discussed earlier, those needs are rapidly changing and evolving due to different pressures. And you can see here in the bottom part, NEET, which is the people who are not in employment, education, or training. So for youth, the percentage of people under this category is quite high. And so there's really an opportunity there to help these people to really develop and upskill themselves so they're better positioned. We already talked on the right side about some of the skills and the automation impact. So let's go to the next slide. So, and you see on the next slide, I think we're moving away, from, there's not a single solution. It's high school, university, and then work. There are actually many different ways to combine learning at different points in time. There are obviously degree programs, and that's a great solution for some. There are more modular approaches. There are ways of stacking a small number of courses and credentials, so someone can upskill themselves. And that these things can happen, as you see on the next slide, at different points in the career. And what we're trying to do is really, on the right side, to broaden the range of options that are available for learners, to give more people more flexibility. Not everybody is in position to finish high school, take 4 years out to focus on full-time studies without earning an income and without having a certain outcome after those 4 years. And we're also trying to work across the ecosystem. We talked about working with the universities. We're also engaging with people in the industry to understand what they need and then to connect different points. So from industry to training providers to universities, et cetera. Okay. And here on, as I mentioned, historically on the top left, you do your education, you're done, you work for a long time, and then hopefully you have a nice retirement after that. So in the future of education, and we see this already happening now more and more, is some people will do education, but the idea that you'll have the periodic upskilling. And when we talk about this upskilling, this isn't you're at a company or you're going for a 2-hour seminar here or there. It's much richer experience and much more aligned with specific outcomes and development objectives. So for what we're doing is actually developing a technology platform that's helping to connect the different networks in terms of opportunities, in terms of content providers, in terms of learners, in terms of the actual job opportunities. And we're trying to be there for adult learners throughout the life cycle, because we see this as not something that's happening at one time, but it's happening at different times for different people who have different needs. Next. So as I discussed, in terms of our product verticals, we have skills, and we're working with different training partners there. And we're also looking in terms of, when we say credit liquidity, finding ways for different people in the different parts of the ecosystem to recognize and provide credit for people from different learning providers, sometimes from experience as well. We are working right now with an overseas provider that hopefully we can announce very soon in terms of stackable credentials that are geared for the Indonesian market. As I mentioned, the university partners, as well as for the enterprise partners. Okay. And then just very briefly, now from early discussions, the last two slides, one is that, we'd like to talk about or explore ways both to operate with the CFA Society overall, and then maybe with individual members as well. So a couple of things we discussed here. We can have further discussions potentially in terms of related to financial literacy, both online and offline in the next, because I'm mindful of the time. And then also with individual members too. So it could be, working together based on individuals' expertise and interest areas in terms of working together to create content. Or maybe some of the members may be interested to collaborate and be included on the list of trainers. And they're working with some of our enterprise clients. And maybe for the companies where you work, maybe there are ways for us to help provide some training to your colleagues that may be helpful and relevant, and help them to upskill in important ways. So that's what we wanted to share from the presentation. And then I think, yeah, we can open up for some questions, and maybe there's some in the chat. So what, 28, okay, can we go to slide 28? So I can. So the question is on the learning ecosystem. Where is this on the learning? Oh, here? Is this the correct slide? That's 29. Okay.
Maybe Teddy, you can unmute yourself, then ask the question directly.
Boleh juga, ya.
Okay, thank you. Previous slide actually, in the second pie diagram, there is sentence about say learning ecosystem expansion. So would you please to explain to me about what type or what kind of learning ecosystem?
Okay, so in terms of the ways to learn, we talked about the digital and combining that with other ways. In terms of the types of content that would be available and accessible to them. So, for example, they may have been working with a certain group of training partners. They may have been relying on internal training, things like that. So they're looking to access different sources of learning. Again, it must be relevant and impactful. It's not just going out there and getting content for getting content's sake, but they are trying to learn on that. We talked about earlier some of the disruptive things. So they may be wanting to learn about how are other companies or in other countries, how are they dealing with this disruption? And we're also trying to play a role in that. We're looking at bringing in some, we hope to be able to announce more formally soon, but some very specific vocational related training with an overseas partner that's actually designed very specifically for this market for certain industries. And so being able to make that content that's relevant and hopefully impactful, accessible to both companies and to individuals here as an example. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Matthew.
Okay. Digital learning increasing. Oh, so digital learning increased as long as the pandemic. Is it still important to take formal study, such as bachelor or diploma degree? I can only give a personal opinion on that. That's someone who spent a lot of time taking at university. I still think it definitely has a role. But I think that it's one size fits all, and I come from the US where the percentage of people who do go to university is higher than some other geographies. So I do definitely think it has a role, but one has to be clear about when they're getting out of it. And we also have to be honest too about which pathways might be more relevant and more accessible for different people. And part of what we're trying to do is increase the number of pathways that may be more relevant and more accessible for people. So I think it still has a thing. I think for certain things, now we looked at the virtual reality, right, for the medical training. Now, those people who are in that field are going to need a significant amount of study that's likely to still take place through a much more formal and longer term structured program. Perhaps there would be digital elements to that. But in terms of the robustness and commitment to that, I mean, certain things would still be in place, absolutely. Will EdTech replace traditional formal study, or maybe we don't need bachelor's and master's, just take learning from EdTech? Again, I think for the way we look at it, it's not necessarily an either or. I think it's more about what makes sense given the objective and given the learner. But number two, we also thinking about, we're focusing on workforce. So I think, trying to break away from the model of, okay, I study SMA, lulus, I go to university, S1, maybe S2, and then I work for 30 or 40 years, and then without significantly revisiting my skills, understanding what's developing, things like that. Things are changing much more quickly than we just can't afford to do that, to stay relevant. And that's happening in different fields, and it's happening, people operating at different levels as well. And so we're trying to see that, not see that, but help accommodate and support that, breaking away from that, that earlier model. It's the other slide where you see that, study, work, right? I think on the other one, right? Education today, study, work. And now it's like, okay, the future is saying, okay, maybe the number of people that are actually relevant for university might be a little bit less, but definitely still relevant for some. But for many people, periodic, meaningful upskilling will be part of the equation. How do we adapt with the fast moving of technology, especially in Indonesia, which lacks access to information and technology? Wow, I think this is the kind of question I should ask the moderator. How do we adapt fast moving? Well, I mean, even here you see different players in the ecosystem really trying to help address this. So one of these things you see here in terms of the training providers are some of the boot camps, right? They're working, and I'm not a technical person, but they're trying to provide or fill these needs, for example, on JavaScript and other things, by providing high quality intensive training to people who are really seriously interested in upskilling what they can do, what they can offer in a short amount of time. And to be honest, when they do the intake, from our understanding from talking to one of the key players in this field, they actually have a very high failure rate. But I don't think that's a bad thing. They have a high failure rate because they're trying to take what are seen as global standards and say, okay, people here in whatever local market, let's try and raise ourselves to the global standards. It's going to be very demanding in any market. And in any market, you're going to only have some people that succeed, but not making compromises, setting the bar high for this field in terms of doing that. More generally, we saw earlier in terms of the need to upgrade the digital skills. So how do we do that not only for people like us who are working in the more formal environment, how do we work with the small businesses? How do we get them to better integrate into the digital economy? How do we actually upskill them? Not in for ways that they can say, tick the box and okay, I finished the training, but ways for them to actually impact their business, ways for them to be better connected into their ecosystem. So I think there's a lot to really understand in terms of the quality that's needed, but also the relevance and the impact. So when we think about how we actually think about us as our mission to link education, training, to economic opportunity, for us, again, if someone completes the training, that's great. But what we're really looking to do is to help them to connect to better economic opportunity. The boot camps are an example, another example of doing that. And I know one of them, they've had an excellent result rate in terms of placing students, graduates, into very good jobs where those students can, again, really contribute. So we really have to push ourselves a bit more to understand the gaps and find ways to fill it. Indonesia learning curriculum. Okay, I am not going to pretend that I have expertise in this. No, honestly, because ini saya sudah lama di sini, but lebih dari 20 tahun, but I am not an expert on the learning curriculum. I know it's being hotly debated. I know it's been even more hotly debated given the most recent, the current minister having a different background. If anyone else would like to comment on that, I'd do that. How to be a complement or even option from existing education system. Well, again, I think, the second question, again, we're trying to create multiple pathways and enable that. One example is, the workforce-focused blended learning program. So it's not, okay, you either take S1 or you go to work. Okay, you can actually do both. And it's easy to say, okay, you can do both in the end, but how do you actually enable that? And so the blended learning is one way to do that. Again, how do you then connect that blended learning to economic opportunity? How do you incorporate counseling, advisory? How do you prep people, make sure that they're not only getting an academic degree, but actually it's connecting? So we have to be talking to our partners and other people on the industry side of the ecosystem to understand their needs and connecting that back into what we're offering to the people that are following the blended learning path. There are also ways to do that with stackable credentials and things like that. On the viewer in Indonesian learning curriculum, I don't know if Rainer, you want to comment on that, but for me, I'm not well placed, and so I don't want to on that. It's just not fair. I think Rainer is being very quiet, which I can tell you is not the usual case. So it must be a tough question. If you can skills. Well, I think that's an excellent question. So what I would like to do, let's go back to that other chart where it showed the route, the connection, that one, the university linkage. So I'm trying to go deeper here and understand why is it like that. We can find, I don't know if that's from Mercer or ILO or McKinsey Group. It's from ILO. So find from ILO, why is it like that? And why is that strong level of disconnect? And again, it's not only Indonesia. You see actually Philippines and is that Vietnam? I'm not sure. Vietnam. And so Philippines, we know, actually has some specific strengths in curriculum like nursing and things like that, and actually known as global standard. But more generally, they see a disconnect as well. So I think that's a bit of homework for us to do. And it's also a bit of homework to make sure that when we're doing our online blended, that we're learning from where those gaps are. So maybe if we can find the reference study, we'll definitely share that back with the team and see if there's something there that may be interesting for all of us to better understand. I'm mindful of the time, but I think there are a few more minutes if anyone has any questions.
I think we go to the last page, the partnership page. No, after this.
Amy. Yeah, so again here, from the organizing committee, feel free to share our contact information with any and all who might be interested. Again, one of the motivations for us to talk with this group specifically is because I think we have some shared interests in terms of the upskilling. We talk about financial literacy, so how do we equip people to make better decisions? And we know that Indonesia and many markets know what's available in terms of the information, how things are operating in certain sectors, including financial services, probably is evolving a little bit more rapidly than people's understanding more generally. So how do we help people catch up? Also, something I'll just mention too, sometimes we have enterprise clients that are looking for training in areas like M&A, corporate finance, things like that. And these are areas, yes, we can go and find something off the, from somewhere out there. But it'd be great actually if we can partner with people who understand the local market and understand how to communicate effectively and educate effectively for different audiences within the local market. So that's just another example. And this is actually a real life example of an inquiry that we've received very recently. And so we don't want to go back and again, okay, here's basic training X from who knows from wherever, if it's not going to be that relevant and helpful for them. So being able to collaborate with whether it's at a group level, CFA society, or individual member or members, those are things that we are interested in absolutely leveraging the knowledge that you would have, and then combining that with some of our experience in terms of creating the digital learning and the content, because that's something that we've done extensively, particularly with the university partners. So not only having the platform to deliver, but we do have the opportunity, or we do have the experience to actually designing and creating the content. And it would be great to have some additional collaboration. I don't know if you want to add anything to that right now.
Yeah, I think I'll just, thanks, Matt. I think I'll just add a little bit. So I think we're transforming the company. So if you see our website, it's currently pintaria.com, but we're moving to a new website, and we're going to have a unified platform for our product, which is the enterprise, the TQ, and the skills. And I think we will be happy to collaborate with CFA members to create contents which will be sold to the retail publics. And practically the partnership will entails, we have a production team, we have a full studio to create education content. And what practically we need from the members are just the curriculum, and perhaps, practically the curriculums and the topics. And then we can co-create the content and, have some sort of revenue share based on the sales. I think that's the content part. And then for the structure, I think as Matt has mentioned, we have big corporate clients, which often demand, financial modeling training, M&A training, restructuring training. And I think we would be happy to have partners for live trainings with these corporates together with the CFA members. And also, if your corporate needs some trainings, I think you could reach out to us and explore. We are exploring partnerships with universities in the USA and also in Singapore for executive education. So I think we're doing all levels education, including executive, mid-level, and also as I mentioned during the Indomaret case, it's for onboarding of new employees. And best practically provide the platform and also the connect between the learners and the education providers. Yeah, I think that's from me. Any other question? I think we're on time, yeah. 8 p.m.
Oh, we start on time, finish on time, right? Yeah.
Kalau masih ada pertanyaan silakan ya. Jadi kita emang tertarik kerjasama dengan Pintaria. Kita mungkin mulai dengan CFA syllabus introduction. Kan ada 10 topik di CFA syllabus. Mungkin setiap topik kita bikin satu subtopik atau 2 subtopik, bikin videonya biar bisa kita sebar ke masyarakat Indonesia. Jadi utamanya dalam bahasa Indonesia. Jadi kalau ada anggota sini yang berminat untuk membantu, ya mohon kontak saya.
Ya, jadi kita memang berpartner di 2 aspek ya, non-profit education, which is financial literacy, sama yang for profit, and we're open to both.
Open to both,
yeah.
because it's both aligned with our mission, and we want to be able to fulfill that mission in different ways with different learner groups. So yeah, please, in terms of, we really appreciate the opportunity tonight to share a tiny bit. And I mean, we're here in Indonesia. If you can hear the sepeda motor in the background, we're here, and we really this is our focus area, and really would look forward to different ways to collaborate, and again to keep broadening the ecosystem and provide more access and more learning opportunities for the workforce.
Yeah, you can always reach out to us through LinkedIn or through the Chatterholder WhatsApp group. I'm there. Feel free to reach out to us anytime, yeah, if you want to partner with us, or is there anything we can do together.
Or just brainstorm, boleh juga ya.
Okay, I think we'll close this webinar. Thanks everyone for joining the webinar. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Really appreciate it from everyone.
Boleh foto sebentar, Pak?
Foto dulu.
Oh, the photo. Yes, the photo. Selalu the photo. Ini saya bukan orang milenial, so saya bukan foto.
Pinnya dicabut ya.
Ada satu orang Liverpool, satu orang di San Francisco.
Oke.
Move spot. Wait, we have to. I think we'll move spotlight. Yeah, like ini yang lebih.
Tolong nyalain videonya. Bu Siti mungkin. Rahma.
Oke.
Saya skip dulu Pak. Ya.
Oke, saya ambil fotonya ya.
Bentar, ada Pak Teddy
Pak
belum?
Teddy, Pak Farel. Pak Teddy. Oke, 1, 2, 3. Sekali lagi. Pak tadi blank ya. Oke. Ya, 1, 2, 3. Oke, thank you.
Terima kasih. Thank you.
Ya, terima kasih.
Thank you, Nati.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Rainer. Thank you, Pintaria.